and welcome to Unfiltered Career Talks with Margaret Boy. And today I'm very excited to have my friend Britt Boeskov, who is an advisor and board member to a number of organizations. But prior to that, she's worked at an executive level for many years for a different organization. And our topic today is how to get your first non-executive director level position. So Britt, welcome. And could you actually start with giving us a brief introduction of your background?
Absolutely. So I'm Britt Boeskov. I'm from Denmark and I used to live in London. I've been in London for 17 years. I miss it a bit, but now I'm back in my homeland. My background is a business school education in intercultural communication and management. And many years ago in 2005, I moved to London to pursue a job, as so many people do. And I ended up staying with the same company for 17 years. During that time, I worked my way up and got executive level jobs, worked for the CEO for more than 12 years, and really enjoyed leading and developing that company from a small to very large company. And then on today's topic, about 4 years ago, I joined a board of directors as an independent non-executive director. And I did that for some reasons. Other people will do it for other reasons, but that's of course what we're going to talk about today. But at present, I have 4 board roles and a consulting gig. I've transferred into more portfolio career. Other people will prefer to have 1 or 2 board roles alongside with their day job. So
amazing. No, thank you. I think you've had an amazing career. So why did you actually decide to look for that first non-exec director role? Did it just come to you, or did you actively decide to start looking?
I actively decided to start looking because I had been a leader within one company for so long. I realized that either I needed to move on and get experience from different companies, but I still liked it there. And I thought, what can I do instead to broaden my horizon, to get more variation and to see leadership from a different point of view? And then I had a female colleague who inspired me because she got a board role. And I noticed that the way that she started approaching her own role at the same company as I worked in started to differ, because she was seeing things from a high level, from a more strategic level, and she saw things in a broader context. So I thought that was really worthwhile. And that's when I started thinking about getting a board role.
And how do you even look for these opportunities? Like, is it all done via networking? I think there are executive search firms that can help you as well, but how do you look for these opportunities? Where do you start?
It's really hard to know. It's one of the challenges with boards, and one of the reasons why boards are not diverse enough today is that a lot of recruitment is done through existing circles of people who are already on boards. But everybody needs to have a first board role. Nobody's born into boards. So I think there's hope for everyone. Networking is important. And I started out by joining a network group that had to do with women on boards. And they asked a very poignant question from the start, which was, have you told anyone about your ambition to join a board? And I had to sort of pull my hair out and go, I haven't actually really told anyone. So that is a really good place to start. And it's not enough to tell your friends. Quite often it's worth expressing that interest to senior people in your organization, to mentors, to people you know from outside, maybe your family members and other people in a broader sense, so that they know you're interested. But of course, it's also worth mentioning it to search firms. In my case, I mentioned it to someone I was working with. So I actually used this company to recruit people for my organization. And I told them, hey, by the way, I just want you to know that I'm also ready for joining a board, just in case. And it didn't take so long from that time until they actually contacted me about a role.
Well, great. So that's how you got the first role, was actually through an agency.
That's how I got the first role. It's not that traditional, but it will become more common. I'm pretty sure that more boards are aware that they shouldn't just look within their own circles now. So more recruitment will be happening. And a lot of the search firms you use, they have a different team that works with non-executive, but all you need to do is connect and have your name put on the right list.
Mhm. And actually, what kind of person would be ideal for a board, right? I mean, if you have been working at a C level, I guess that's an obvious choice. What if you are a vice president? What if you're a senior director? Can you potentially still look for those opportunities?
Absolutely. So boards are a bit different. You're not running the business day to day. And you need to be a broad-minded generalist first and foremost. You need to care about the whole company. You cannot come in as only a specialist. You can be a specialist, but the hat that you're wearing in the board is that you care for the whole company. You care for all decisions that matters for the company's future and the whole strategy. So even if you are like a very, very gifted lawyer or a finance person or HR person, you cannot really come in there and only do that. You need to think wider than that. So the most important thing is that you have an open mind, you're broad, and that you're willing to listen as well. Because it's very different from an executive job. You don't get to decide. You don't get to tell people what to do. You simply get to support.
Yeah. And what's the best way to engage your network? So you mentioned talking to mentors, if you have one. I mean, would you actually talk to people internally, or would they not think it's a conflict of interest? I mean, like, did you go to an event? Like, what's the best way to engage that network?
Conflict of interest is a really important part. You usually cannot sit on a board of a competitor or supplier of your present day company. But I would still advise to speak to your, for example, your manager. So I said to my manager, I don't want to leave, but I am interested in taking on a board role in order to broaden my, rather than being sent on an expensive course or something. And that was a dialogue I had, and I thought that was really helpful.
And what did your manager say?
Well, he was supportive, and that was very good. There are some managers who are concerned about the time spent and so forth, but I think if you are in a leadership role, you should be allowed to manage your own time and drive your own results. So if you hit that snag, please don't think about it as it's not a real blocker.
And are there any events you can go to like I mean, I'm sure anyone that
great groups. I would say LinkedIn is full of networks, both virtual and physical. You can pay for some good networks to also give you some coaching. For example, I took a course on how to change my CV specifically for board because I needed to talk more about the skills that I could use outside my day job. And so in that sense, there are some really good groups, but there's no must. And you don't have to take an education like a postgraduate non-executive education in order to join a board. I think some people feel they have to do those things, but in reality, you just need to be mindful about the differences between a board role and a day-to-day exec role.
And where would you go on LinkedIn to try to find these opportunities or these groups? Like, where do you look on LinkedIn? I mean, I agree, LinkedIn is amazing for networking in general, but like, how do you do that?
Yes, I mean, of course, if you're in a particular industry, there might be something specific for you, but I looked very broadly. Women on Boards is one organization that supported me, but I also find that each country has groups for women who aspire to become board members. So new on board, for example, is something I would search for and get a lot of guidance from that. Just remember, you don't have to pay a fortune to educate yourself. You can
absolutely
also use your existing network.
And last question, like what's the interview process like, right? Because you're on board of 4 different organizations. So what's the interview process and how do you make yourself stand out? So actually 2 questions.
It really depends. So I'm on a private equity owned board. I'm on a listed board. I'm on a cooperative board where there's a bunch of shareholders. And I'm on a board that's owned by a different smaller company. So it really depends. But in general, the interview process is more of a matching exercise to see if you match the organization and if you match the skills that the board have identified that they are missing. So it's not so much about projecting yourself as a perfect expert on X, Y, and Z, but more about bringing across your general management and leadership skills, your attitude, and your personality, I guess, because that is really important. So I've had few questions that really dug deep into my, what I've delivered, for example. and more questions about how would you handle conflict? How would you handle, you know, a difficult situation where the CEO leaves the company, and things like that. And then people will ask about availability. Will you be there? Will you take the time to prepare and show up and be an active board member? So you need to prepare personality questions and availability questions and really have clear answer to those.
How many interviews have you had per role?
I would say 3 is the average. Mm-hmm. So maybe one with a headhunter, one with a part of the management, and one with some of the board members. It's rare that you meet all board members beforehand, so you need to do your own research as well. Because I think it's an interview process, but you need to see it as a matching process as well. Do you want to work with these people? Do you trust them? When you take a board role, it's important to remember that you have a sort of a legal responsibility to run that company at your own personal liability as well. So you need to trust that these are people you can work with and that you feel they would do everything to drive that company in the right way, in the legal way.
And how can you make yourself stand out? I mean, of course, you would prepare those examples, like for any interview, for any other job, you will have examples of what you've delivered, impact you've made, etc. But is there anything else you can do to make yourself stand out, specifically for board level interviews?
Yeah, I would say if you can give good examples of how you've behaved, remembering that they're really looking for someone to take part in this sort of defense mechanism and governance mechanism, I think that would be really helpful. Maybe you've chaired some projects where you were almost like a chair of a board. Maybe you've worked with groups of decision makers to help them come to right decisions elsewhere. You can give some of those examples and prepare well for that. And you can stand out by also quickly understanding the ecosystem and the dynamics of the company and show that back to the people you're speaking with. But first and foremost, you can stand out by being a really pleasant person to work with, someone that people would call up in the time of crisis or in time of good times to support and help a company forward.
And sorry, just one last question. What's the time commitment now that you're on board? Like, what's the typical time commitment? I'm sure it varies from company to company, but typically
it does differ. It does differ per board. I would say maybe on average 2 days a month, 3 days a month, but that could be that it's just that you're meeting once, or some boards even only meet every quarter. But then it's a very heavy time commitment. Around that time, you need to be fully present. And of course, there's the regular reading of materials, and then there's the work that is not planned in advance. So it can be that you all of a sudden sit on a committee that has a lot of work. You're part of recruiting someone new, maybe the CEO is changing, and that takes a lot of time. So you need to be flexible. You can't predict it 100% in front.
Great, thank you so much for sharing all of this great information. I know there are people in my network who are looking for these types of positions, so I really appreciate you sharing all the information. I will of course share your LinkedIn profile as well. Any final parting words to anyone looking for that first move?
Thank you, Margaret, for letting me be on here. And I would definitely say to anyone, please continue your search on this, because it's a great process. It's a great way to learn, and it'll give you really strong perspective also for your day job if you do this.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Britt, again. And thank you everyone for watching. And I will see you soon on another video.